Hey, what's up? It's Zach. And what I'm going to be doing right now is talking about fear, specifically my 3 greatest fears. And one additional direction I'm going to take this in is I want to talk about anger. Anger! Kidding, but I am going to talk about anger. Anger about that I have around these 3 big fears. I have a preface, and then I'm going to move into talking about my fears. So let's get into it. First of all, a quick story. 6 or 7 years ago, I was in a pretty gnarly car accident. I was driving on the highway, and I say through no fault of my own or anyone, good driving conditions, but my vehicle malfunctioned in the post-analysis. Axle or wheel was broken, and the car, I couldn't control the vehicle at all. It drifted and slammed into the median, and I shit you not, flipped upside fucking down on the highway at 80 miles an hour. And I remember the surreal moment of the world turning upside down and time seeming to stop. I remember the vehicle slamming into the road and sparks flying and the roof caving in. It was very uncertain if I was going to survive that situation. Fortunately, very, very fortunately, the seatbelt worked, the security features of the vehicle worked, and I survived without injury. A goddamn miracle. Very grateful for that. And the point of this is that I have an experience every time I go near that area, that stretch of highway, which I go near all the time. It's not far from where I live, and it's a straight stretch of highway. I get this sensation in my body of quite uncomfortable and a sensation that I need to get the fuck out of there or something bad is about to happen. And it happens, I would say subconsciously, because it's before I even realize where I am or what's going on. I get the sensation in my body and I get the impulse. Now, obviously, I'm not in existential threat when I'm there now. I'm not an existential threat when I'm there in the future. And it was really more of the existential threat had to do with my malfunction of my vehicle, as best I can tell. But so that impulse that I get is not immediately obvious what the message that's being sent to me is about or how to interpret it. But I would like to make an observation that even though it's not obvious or immediately obvious what that's all about, or even 100% bullseye accurate at first, you can see how it would be a useful thing to get the message. You can see how it would be a useful thing to be aware when there's a cue in the environment that's signifying something extremely threatening to my very survival happened in association with this cue. You can see how that could be useful. So the first observation I want to make as a preface is that fear has an important purpose. Fear is some sort of threat detection and alarm system that the body and brain uses to try to protect itself and try to survive and try to live and sustain life and live longer. So in that way, fear is not a bad thing, given that information. And I would even say, from my view, fear is actually a good thing. Although the caveat is that it is not always obvious what exactly the message that you're getting is in regards to, or how to interpret it immediately every time. It can take, for me, it takes time to wait, sit, let the feelings rise, maybe let the feelings fall. But I will say this, in my experience, I've always found a message to be present, a useful message from that, feeling in my body, from that emotion, fear. And I would just say that my second observation is that because of this, fear can be welcomed with compassion, with understanding, with kindness, with acceptance, because it's a good thing. There's space for fear to be welcomed as a good thing. And that's good news, because just like the car accident situation, as an example, I believe every fear that I experience is related to, just like the car crash situation, to it was set in place or initiated by a younger version of myself who felt very threatened or felt that my very survival was at stake. Now, I'm sure that the earlier back I go in my life, the less critical thinking skills and abilities I had to make sense of all that, and which can, as it was happening at the time, which can make it additionally a little bit more difficult to interpret or get an accurate, useful message out of the fear if it was set in place by a version of me that was, say, 1 to 5 years old and didn't have logical thinking skills. So I'm saying a lot here, but the short of it is that it's good news if fear can be welcomed with compassion, if fear can be welcomed with kindness, because it's coming from a younger version of me that was pretty scared or pretty threatened. So I don't feel I need to cut myself off from these emotions, and that's a good thing. I don't feel like I have to resist the emotion. I don't feel like I have to somehow avoid it, or that it's bad and it's to be hated. I feel none of that. None of that is true in my opinion, and this can all be welcomed with love. Now, I say that as a caveat because I am going to be talking about painful emotion of anger I feel about the fears later. So, that preface, that's in. Let's proceed. My 3 greatest fears. Fear number 1, and these are a little bit dark, so buckle the fuck up. Kidding, but they are dark, so now you know. Fear number 1 is my number 1 greatest fear is I'm too unlovable. I'm too unlovable. Or you could say this different ways, like I'm too unlovable, I'm too unlikable, I'm too flawed, I'm too incompetent. I'm inherently flawed, and it's so, and when I say I'm too inherently flawed, I mean it's so bad that it's going to cause consequences that could threaten my very survival. And no, this is not, these thoughts aren't totally rational, I get that, but the thoughts associated with this are like, okay, if I'm too unlikable, or if I'm too unlovable or too unacceptable, eventually at some point it could get potentially so bad people won't want to do business with me, people won't want to help me, people won't want to help me get my needs met, the very needs that I may eventually have to survive. And I understand that's not totally rational, but those are the thoughts. Now, the experience of being triggered by this fear, or this fear being triggered, is like, it seems like something's wrong with somebody or something, and I just have this vibe that, is it because of me? Is it because something about me is inherently like flawed or inherently not workable with the reality of life as we know it? So it's about something being wrong with me inherently. So that's fear number 1. I'm too unlovable, I'm too unacceptable. There's something too flawed with me inherently for me to thrive or even possibly survive. Fear number 2. Moving on to fear number 2. Fear number 2 is I have fucked up too badly. I have fucked up too badly. And what fear number 2, what this is about, is that it's a fear that I've made a mistake, that the consequences of which are so severe that I won't be able to stand it, or I won't be able to thrive or even possibly survive. And it's just the thoughts, although they may be irrational, are like, something seems wrong in a situation, and this extrapolation occurs. Oh my God, is it something I made a mistake on? Is it an error I made? And what are the worst case scenario of the possibility, how bad the consequences could be? And eventually, it's always generally possible for me to imagine in my bad moments a way that this could be irredeemable, permanent, and unfixable and unrepairable. And the experience of having this fear triggered is like something seems like it's just not right. And the sensation I have is this something I did? It's not really about me being inherently flawed. It's about a decision, choice, action, mistake I made being so consequential that it's kind of like damning. And yeah, that's the experience. It's that, oh my God, did I fuck this up? And did I fuck this up so badly it can't be repaired? That's the vibe of this. That's fear number 2. I have fucked up too badly. So, fear number 1, I'm too unlovable. Fear number 2, I fucked up too badly. Fear number 3 is that the outside environment, the outside conditions are too unwelcoming, too difficult, too hostile, or unsurvivable. And the thoughts kind of associated with this, and I get it, these are not necessarily rational, but it's that if the difficulty level of the world or the physical universe as we know it rises, and I am thwarted at attempt or multiple attempts, and the possibility arises in my mind, oh my God, is this going to be so difficult that I will never get my needs met, or I will never get my goal met, or I will never get what needs to be done for me to get by or thrive or possibly even survive. It's really not about inherently something having to do with me. It's not inherently having to do with the decision I made. It's having to do with the inherent nature of the outside environment being just too hostile. And with this one, the experience of this fear being triggered is kind of like something doesn't go right, and it seems like when I do I may be doing like a brief introspection. Did this have something to do with me? Was this a decision I made, or is this just a high degree of difficulty or higher than I expected? And from there, the fear can rise. It can become intense. Those thoughts I described can become intense, and it can become a scary thing for me. So that's the third fear, that the outside world is too difficult, too greater degree of difficulty than I can handle, than I can stand, or I can, maybe potentially even survive. Now, do I understand what I've described to you is overblown, probably in potentially every situation, nearly every situation? Yes, I understand. But this is my life as I've experienced it so far, so just kind of making observations and reporting data at the moment. So, it's a little bit nervous and vulnerable to explain all those, but also a bit therapeutic. So, I'm thinking it's a good thing to do, make this video. Now, I want to talk about this last part, about anger I feel around these fears. And I will share very plainly that my experience of fear is that virtually 99% or so of the time, what I'm afraid the extent of the potential threat is always 99% of the time it's overblown. It's not commensurate with reality. It's not accurate to the facts on the ground. Okay, so the experience I have with these fears is I can quickly become obsessive and compulsively ruminate over these fears, and it takes the form of me, to say it briefly in summary, kind of dropping everything and putting all my mental, emotional attention and headspace towards what I would call trying to figure this out. And it's, in so many ways, that's unfortunate because, for example, if I'm dealing with irrational thoughts, or if I'm dealing with a concern that's not really lining up or mapping to evidence or verifiable facts, then there's no figuring out to be done. It could be likened to playing with what people call a rigged deck, and either all the cards are not present, or what's available to you is not sufficient or not solvable in any sense that we could imagine that would count as being a solution. So that's unfortunate, because there's kind of like not a way to figure out something that's not rational or not really necessarily tied into reality. And it can also become ongoing, because, as you can imagine, not being able to find a solution, as I'm spinning this stuff around and ruminating on it, not being able to find a solution does not, when I'm in that fear state, it does not bring forth an attitude of, okay, great, since I can't figure it out, let's just move on. When I'm in the state of fear over this, it's like the fear can escalate and rise even more when I perceive that I can't figure it out. So, as you can imagine, these are all unpleasant. And really what's at stake, that may be the most important thing with me, is not only that it's unpleasant, is that it is taking a limited resource of my time and energy, that I will die someday. I don't know when, but I will. At least my physical body will cease to exist in this world as I know it, and I won't have the opportunity to have time, to have energy, and to have the ability to interact with the things that I can interact with right here in the same way. So that kind of is it, and I'm starting to narrow in and really hit the kind of like the hot warm center of what a lot of my anger revolves around, is that this rumination, these fears indulge, like when I get in this state and I spend this time unproductively doing all this, I'm losing time, I'm losing energy, I'm losing headspace, I'm losing experience that I won't get back. And that's painful to even say, it's painful to think about. And there are things in front of me that I can enjoy. There are things in front of me that are beautiful in so many ways. There are people around me that I love. There's fun to be had and adventure to be had that I cannot engage, enjoy, or even notice sometimes when I get into this thing that I'm describing with the three big fears. And I feel a number of painful emotions over that. I feel sadness, I feel grief, I feel a sense of loss, and if I'm being honest, I feel anger over that. It ticks me off that to think about losing things I can't get back, I can't replace, and I'm losing it to something that gives me nothing. I'm losing it to something that does not move any needle of progress forward in any aspect of my life. It pisses me off. It fucking peeves me off! I'm trying to be lighthearted, okay, but I feel anger over it. Now, just to close, all those negative emotions notwithstanding, I also really am wanting to move in this direction of not getting owned by my anger, or not stopping only at anger. I really want to move through this as it occurs and reach a place of patience, receiving my emotions and my fear with compassion, love, understanding it's a flag that a younger me threw up out of a time that I felt very threatened, and was trying to do the best I could. My body and brain was trying to do the best I could to help me survive and live and potentially thrive in this world. So all the negative stuff, negative feelings, negative emotions, even negative thoughts, painful emotions, painful thoughts notwithstanding, my strong desire is to really experience every emotion, even the anger, experience it fully, and I also would like to let it rise and fall, move through it, and I would like to welcome all my emotions, including the fears. And so, including the emotion of fear. So that's a quick rundown. I thought this was, every time I make a video, it goes longer than I thought it would. But that's my 3 greatest fears. And that's an insight of the anger I feel about it. And also just some general thoughts on the kind of good news is that, even these fears, when I'm patient and sit with them and can let them rise and fall and move through them, turns out my brain and body is actually sending me a message I can use. So far, in every situation I've experienced, there's always a message, always useful information. So, cool. Hey, love you guys. Talk soon.